Incredible Millionaire CEO surprises autistic son with blind date. One girl's touching response to life-changing evening. Jacob leaned against the wall in the crowded school hallway, his eyes skimming over his classmates, bright laughter echoing around him like an alien language. An unnoticed observer in a world where he existed only in the periphery, Jacob felt like a shadow, a barely visible figure amid golden smiles and carefree shouts. Inside, a storm churned, a volatile clash of excitement and dread over the upcoming blind date with Emma, a girl whose gentle presence had once sparked a flicker of connection. What was he thinking? Would she see the same awkwardness he felt? Fleeting moments of hope spiraled into dark tides of self-doubt. His father, David, the self-appointed titan of their Texas town's tech industry, had no idea what it was like for Jacob. To David, success meant long hours, unmistakable ambition, and accolades. Yet, he carried the burden of guilt like a second skin. In seeking a bridge between their worlds, he had sought out Emma. An endeavor meant to unite father and son only left Jacob feeling trapped. Potential liabilities latched onto him without warning. Loneliness clung to Jacob like a shadow. He just wanted to be seen, wanted someone to acknowledge the real and the artist, the dreamer. Instead, his fingers twisted the fabric of his collar, the impending date amplifying the noise in his mind. What if Emma didn't like his drawings? Was he even worthy of her time? The shimmering hope of connection dimmed with each tick of the clock as anxious breaths came out in ragged bursts, muscles taut with tension. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With the evening approach, a tempest brewed within him, conflicting desires battling for supremacy. Jacob wanted to impress Emma, to show her the beautiful worlds he painted, but fear whispered dark doubts. He imagined her dismissive glances or a half-hearted smile aimed at his awkward attempts at conversation. Meanwhile, David sat at his desk, mind trapped in the corporate grind while his heart lay miles away, tied to Jacob's nerves and the unyielding chasm between them. His partners dismissed his inklings about better supporting families like theirs, trapped in a boardroom full of incredulous laughter. Where was the balance between the titan he portrayed and the dad that Jacob needed? So much was at stake. On one side, a massive deal to secure, on the other, his son's anguished search for acceptance. Anxiety pivoted, slicing through both of their lives, shifting focus back to the foretold evening. As Jacob grasped onto the doorframe, the thin barrier separating earnest hope and raw fear, his breathing faltered. Would he step forward into possibility? Just as strides felt foolish and very much beyond him, Emma's smile broke through like dawn. Introductions rushed by in a haze of unspoken communication. But as the moments stretched, the tipping point loomed precariously. One misstep, one awkward sentence, and their connection could dissolve into oblivion. Time twisted in that tension-laden room, heartbeats throbbing, and silent breaths awaiting revelation, leaving Jacob at the verge of something monumental. Would David's silence echo forever, or could he bring himself to finally step up for his son? The ripple of uncertainty wrapped both father and son, urging them toward a shattered promise, a chance to redefine who they were together. Jacob sat hunched over at the edge of the chair, his fingers tracing the delicate line of his sketchbook, blank pages taunting him with their emptiness. The dining room buzzed quietly as laughter floated from the kitchen, where David entertained a couple of his industry friends, intent on impressing them with stories of his latest ventures. Jacob felt the familiar tug of solitude as conversations faded into the backdrop of his mind. The thrill of a night spent with Emma began to dissipate, replaced by the gnawing reality that the evening had little permanence beyond these four walls. He flipped through the pages, filled with chaotic color splashes that represented fleeting emotions: joy, confusion, longing. Each stroke revealed parts of him only he understood. Just then, he felt the urge to share one of his pieces with Emma, a risk that twisted his stomach into knots. Suppressing the timid voice in his head urging him to close the book, Jacob grasped the tiny flicker of courage ignited by her earlier smile. "Jacob!" David called out, pulling him from his thoughts. "Come join us. I want you to meet someone." His heart raced. What now? Jacob could picture the scenario, his father would introduce him as, "This is my son, the artist," as if that designation encompassed all the complicated facets of his being. What if the friends laughed? What if they didn't take him seriously? He chose to remain seated, letting the hesitation envelop him like a comfort blanket. Instead, he retreated into internal debate, wrestling with the ghost of embarrassment while channeling the frustration he had often observed on David's face when things didn't go as planned. This was not a boardroom or a tech launch, this was his life. Perhaps this was the moment for both of them to redefine success together, beyond the expectations placed on them. Suddenly, a sliver of defiance coursed through him. He needed to be brave, not just for himself but as a testament to the struggles both he and his father faced navigating their respective worlds. Taking a deep breath that tasted of hope and fear, he pushed away from the table and made the decision to join his father. As he entered the kitchen, laughter erupted at one of David's stories, illuminating the tight bonds of camaraderie he craved. David's gaze softened but then turned hesitant, a flicker of concern crossing his face when he met Jacob's eyes. It was a moment too fragile, one that could shatter or strengthen their connection. "Everyone, this is Jacob," David introduced. The room quieted for just a heartbeat before interest flared. Jacob felt dwarfed beneath the weight of their curiosity, a low hum of opinions dancing in the air. "I paint," Jacob said, his resolve nudging his voice forward. "I create pieces that express what I can't usually say." The silence that followed felt interminable. Their expressions ranged from polite intrigue to veiled indifference, dimming Jacob's momentary bravado. Then, one of David's friends leaned in, a smirk hidden behind his drink. "An artist, huh? What do you paint? Abstract disaster?" A rush of heat ignited in Jacob's chest. He struggled not to crumble under ridicule, the familiar sting of rejection tightened its grip. David's frown deepened, the protective instinct surfacing. But before he could intervene, Jacob found the subtle strength to respond. "Well, I've learned that disaster can give way to beauty if you look hard enough." In that instant, something shifted in the atmosphere. A new tension emerged. Had he just unintentionally elevated the stakes not only for himself but also for David? With the challenge hanging in the space between them, Jacob readjusted his posture. He glimmered with a sense of empowerment he had never experienced before. As the doubts still lingered, perhaps there was more at stake than he understood both for him and for David. The night took shape as an intricate dance of vulnerability and connection, but the crippling question remained: would they navigate through the twisted layers of their relationship, or would the weight of expectations stifle their progress once more? Just across the room, Jacob could see David wrestling with the same internal battles, as uncertainty hung in the air like fog. The weight of the moment settled heavily around them as Jacob contemplated their shared potential, the ghost of a connection lingering in uncertain hope, urging him to confront what lay ahead, the first steps toward a deeper understanding. Would they rise above their fears, learning to bridge their silent gaps, or sink deeper into a cycle of misunderstandings? The laughter in the kitchen faded into a low murmur as Jacob stood at the threshold, his heartbeat pounding in rhythm to the unsteady breath he drew. The moment felt suspended in time, a choice pregnant with possibility and danger coiling within it. Feeling the warmth of the gathering, he forced himself to remain steady against the swell of self-doubt. David's friends exchanged glances, flirting with curiosity as Jacob held his ground. Had he crossed an invisible boundary? The challenge he deposed felt like both a gauntlet and a lifeline, and the silence that followed felt heavier than folklore's darkest omens. "Tell us more," one of the attendees urged, a voice brimming with genuine interest throwing Jacob a lifebuoy amidst the weights that threatened to drag him under. He blinked. Should he embrace the supportive tone or retreat to the familiar confines of discretion? "I paint from my heart," he managed, feeling the tension ease not because he was unafraid, but because vulnerability was asking to be his ally. "It's how I make sense of the chaos." "What do you mean?" Another voice chimed in, a probing inquiry that offered Jacob the chance to step into the spotlight. He inhaled deeply, smoothing a hand along the sketchbook he clutched against him like armor. "My work, it's often abstract. Sometimes chaotic, sometimes soothing. It's what I do when I can't find the words." The encouragement in the room shifted his perspective. These were not critics, they were explorers. Jacob's words strung together like neon lights in the darkness of doubt, and for a fleeting moment, he felt a surge of clarity. He was not merely an absent artist. He was a conduit of expression, a voice welcoming others along the very journey of understanding he had grappled with himself. "Mind showing us something?" David's friend, the one who had needled him before, leaned in, skepticism replaced by curiosity. The gradient of Jacob's anxiety steepened, but he found himself stepping closer to the kitchen table, where a few of his smaller sketches lay half hidden beneath a magazine. With a trembling hand, he unfurled the delicate papers, displaying a collection of ethereal landscapes and intricate human emotions strewn across them. Each piece had been conceived in the quiet of solitude, filled with a life's worth of experiences and struggles that few had witnessed. "Well, you certainly have an interesting style," one friend said, tilting his head in thought as Jacob's heart quickened with the possibility of acceptance. Was he being seen? He sensed the tremors of anticipation rising deep within him, the raw wonder that often accompanied an authentic connection. "Those are beautiful," came Emma's voice, suddenly piercing through the chatter, slicing the air with a beacon of warmth. She stood at the edge of the kitchen entrance looking directly at him, her eyes shimmering with celebration or perhaps understanding. That moment made him feel weightless, balancing between joy and fear. Stepping closer, she took in the artwork he had unveiled. "This one, it's so powerful. I just wanted to," he stumbled, realizing now that it had never been merely about validation. It had been an exploration of self-worth and commonality lying beneath their superficial judgments. David's friends began to ask more questions, curious about the concepts he had interwoven into his pieces. The discussion leaned into the very heart of art, the reactions it conjured and the emotions it manifested. Jacob flowed through their queries, feeling the exhilaration of being unbound, but just as quickly as he began to embrace that newfound confidence, a familiar voice surfaced within him, questioning whether this was real or just another moment primed for disappointment. What if this connection was an illusion, destined to dissolve in the impending silence? Jacob found himself veering towards vulnerability, craving more from what he had just experienced. As conversations blossomed, Jacob's awareness shifted back towards David, who wore a deep frown, as if grappling with personal fears reflected in his son's moment, the weight of expectation still very present. Could they finally converge into something constructive? The weight hung in the air like a storm brewing on the horizon, a palpable tension, ready to erupt. Would Jacob's newfound confidence prove an anchor in their tumultuous relationship, or a trigger for long-hidden grievances? With a sharp intake of breath, Jacob resolved to pursue the path unfolding before him. This was not merely about others' perceptions, it was about establishing his voice, asserting his identity, and confronting the profound silence lurking between him and David. As those thoughts settled, he realized, now was the time to navigate deeper into uncharted territories: his art, his relationship with his father, and ultimately, with himself. But as Jacob glanced toward David, their eyes locked, and Jacob was struck with a revelation. The question loomed ever larger: would David be ready to engage, or would their dance in vulnerability be interrupted by the sharp notes of unmet expectations? The room buzzed with excitement, yet Jacob felt a cavernous silence envelop him as he maintained his gaze on David. It was the clearest moment he had experienced. A path forward seemed illuminated, but the shadow of uncertainty loomed just as large. What if his boldness invited conflict instead of connection? He cleared his throat, unwilling to let the moment dissipate. "David," he began, voice slightly trembling with a mixture of hope and trepidation, "do you remember what I used to say about painting? How it felt like looking for clarity in chaos." David's expression softened, as if recalling a distant memory stowed away in the attic of his mind. He shifted, scrutinizing Jacob with a mixture of thoughtfulness and caution. This was the moment Jacob had sought, the bridge he'd always wanted to cross, but would David meet him halfway? "Yes, I do," David replied slowly, crossing his arms defensively. "You always believed that art had the power to connect people." Jacob inhaled deeply, feeling the tension in the room morph into an anchor instead of a weight. "And I still believe that. I'm beginning to see how we can actually communicate if we both share what's inside us. Maybe it's time not to hide behind expectations anymore." David's lips pursed, conflict playing behind his eyes. Jacob pressed forward, willing to put the past delicately aside. "I want to show you my world, the chaos and beauty of it. You don't have to pretend to understand, just be here with me for once." The air thickened with unuttered emotions. It felt as if David was on board a precipice. Would he take the leap or retreat into the comforts of distance? Art was your escape, David finally murmured, his focus shifting from Jacob's eyes to the sketches sprawled on the table like open wounds. You never involved me in that part of your life. A heaviness settled over Jacob. I know. It was easier to shield myself than to risk vulnerability. But running away hasn't helped either of us. A flicker of recognition sparked in David's eyes. Jacob wondered if this was the moment they could finally begin to define their relationship anew. Yet, twisting uncertainty clung to him. Would David stand firm in the difficult conversations that lay ahead, or would he turn away again? Why did you choose the abstract? David's voice broke through Jacob's whirlpool of thoughts, warm inquiry in his tone. This question opened a door Jacob had long kept closed. He found solace in childhood memories, recalling how colors played across canvases, forming a language of comfort. Because it reflects life itself, he responded, passion igniting his voice. Life is messy, undefined. But there is beauty in that chaos, isn't there? Step back and you see something beautiful emerge, and yet, so many people won't take the time to understand it, David interrupted, skepticism clouding their space once more. The retort stung, striking at the heart of Jacob's vulnerability. Maybe it's not just about understanding, it's about being willing to listen. Even to things that are hard to digest. He challenged David, and with that challenge came an urge to protect his own burgeoning self-worth. It was a tender negotiation of sorts, asserting his right to be heard much like he invited others to appreciate his art pieces. Silence fell again, thickening around them. Jacob watched David wrestle with emotions locked beneath the surface, waiting for what might emerge. Despite his earlier resolve, Jacob couldn't shake a chilling realization. Had he pushed too far too soon? Jacob, David said finally, a hint of vulnerability opening in his tone, I don't know if I'm ready to. The sentence trailed off, a sudden urgency spiking in Jacob's chest. The world around him seemed to fade, the clinking of glasses and the laughter from the other room becoming a distant hum. In that moment, Jacob instinctively knew that this conversation could reshape everything, for both of them. But uncertainty clouded the path ahead, intertwining with threads of past hurt. Would they manage to unfurl this dialogue, or would it dissolve into silence once more? He felt the weight of infinite possibilities pressing down on him, a reminder that although progress hinged upon honesty, it might also require a painful reckoning. With a determined resolve, Jacob took a small step forward, daring to breach the distance, a move steeped in courage. In that pivotal moment, he understood this wasn't merely about art anymore but the coveted chance to lay bare his soul and mend a long-stretched bond. But as David's expression shifted, the air crackling with unspoken words, Jacob questioned if they were truly prepared to embrace the depths of each other's truths. Would this be the moment of transformation they had both long yearned for, or would it spiral into wider chasms of disconnection? Jacob felt the pull of vulnerability, a dual-edged sword that both terrified and exhilarated him. He could sense the tentative ground they stood upon, a precarious balance of hope and fear. Would David find the courage to lean into this moment, to embrace the chaos instead of retreating into the safe confines of silence? Jacob took another deliberate breath, ready to guide them through the tumult that lay ahead. What if we started by admitting our own fears? Jacob suggested, his voice steadier now. It surprised him, the resolve bubbling up from within him. My fear has been not showing you who I am. What is yours? David's brows knitted together, clearly grappling with the invitation to lay himself bare. What good would that do if it only stirs more insecurity? He replied, crossing his arms tighter. Jacob recognized this as a defensive maneuver, but he also understood it as a plea for connection. Every dialogue we avoid is another wall between us. If we keep pretending, we're just two people living in the same space but never truly meeting. What if it leads us to a deeper understanding? David's gaze fell to the floor, and Jacob felt the weight of anticipation reverberate in the space. It was a moment of pause, the kind that could either infuse their exchange with depth or consume it in awkward retreat. Okay, David muttered, forcing the words past clenched teeth. I guess I'm scared of not being enough. Enough for you, for anyone. Like I can't possibly understand the complexity of what you create. Jacob could almost taste the bitterness underlying that confession. He remembered feeling a similar pang of inadequacy throughout his life, always measuring himself against others, especially against David. Suddenly, a new clearness formed in his mind. You know, that complexity is what I want to share. It's perfectly imperfect, just like us. We're all still figuring things out, and that's okay. The air shifted, and Jacob sensed that David was starting to peel away layers of denial and self-doubt. Each revelation could transform their relationship, yet with each step came the terrifying risk of exposing old wounds. As David seemed to contemplate this, Jacob took a calculated risk of his own, deciding to reveal more of his world. Let me take you into my process. We could paint together, maybe that would bridge our chasm. David's surprise was palpable, and Jacob's heart raced. Had he stepped over the line? Would this provoke a retreat or a commitment to dive deeper into vulnerability? I don't know if I'm capable of what you want, David finally replied, uncertainty clouding his features. You won't know unless you try, Jacob countered gently but firmly. This could be our chance to build something real, to try and connect through that chaos. Let us create a space where we both can express our experiences, whatever they may be. David met Jacob's gaze, the storm of emotions swirling within his eyes more complex than ever. Fear, doubt, and a flicker of hope collided, creating an electric tension between them. As he pondered, Jacob felt a strange urgency rising within him. This was the defining moment he had been longing for, a possible rebirth of their connection. Yet, what if it wasn't enough? What if this fragile moment unraveled into more miscommunication? I'll think about it, David replied finally, his voice more tentative than before. As he turned away, restoring a measure of distance between them, Jacob felt a familiar pang of frustration. It wasn't what he had hoped for, but in acknowledging even that small step, they had ventured into new territory. Jacob remained resolute. Even if David wavered, he would not retreat. Each brushstroke, each conversation, was positioning him toward growth. What if confronting David's fears led them toward a renaissance of understanding? The potential loomed large, but would it be realized, or would it slip away from both of them once again? With his heart pounding and thoughts racing, Jacob made up his mind. He turned and headed toward his studio, feeling the weight of possibility on his shoulders. Next time, he whispered to himself, I'll dive deeper into my own chaos. It's time to find more than just clarity, it's time to create a connection. But as he looked back, he wondered if David would truly be ready to engage with his artistic vulnerability, or would the canvas remain untouched, forever displaying the potential instead of the reality? Jacob stepped into his studio, a sacred space filled with half-finished canvases and vibrant tubes of paint scattered about like unspoken thoughts. The ambient light filtering through the windows bathed everything in a warm glow, yet he felt chilled inside, a stark contrast to the creative environment surrounding him. There was a storm brewing in the depths of his mind, a fierce cocktail of anticipation and dread, each color more vivid than the last. He set his palette down, the intent to share his process and vulnerabilities with David spurring him on. But was he truly ready to unveil the layers of his own self? Painting had always offered Jacob a refuge, a language through which he communicated with the world when words failed him. Yet, inviting David into that space felt monumental, not just an artistic collaboration but an unveiling of his soul. The brushes, how many times had he sought solace in their strokes? Each stroke, each blend of colors, an extension of himself. He reached for a brush, hesitated, and then pulled back. Would David understand this language? Would he appreciate the chaos, the imperfections? It dawned on Jacob that sharing his art equated to sharing his innermost feelings, his triumphs and disappointments. He became acutely aware of his own fear, not just about David's acceptance but also about his capacity to articulate his complex emotional landscape without losing himself in the process. What if I mess this up? He murmured, the doubt echoing loudly in the spacious studio. It wasn't an exaggeration born from vulnerability but a deeply rooted fear of failure. He questioned the reality of forming a connection, one based on authenticity, when there were so many shadows lurking just beneath the surface. Yet, a spark ignited within him. He began to mix the colors on his palette, the vibrant hues swirling together, each representing a different facet of his emotions: blue for fear, red for passion, yellow for hope. Wouldn't it be more than an art session? Perhaps it could be a ritual, an offering to bridge the gap between them, a tapestry woven from vulnerability and uncertainty. He envisioned David's response, nervous at first, then gradually surrendering to the beauty of chaos. Beauty lay in shared uncertainties. The picture formed in Jacob's mind was a powerful one, illuminating the artistic and emotional chaos that mirrored their own struggles. With a resolute heart, Jacob began to paint, allowing himself to be carried away by the rhythm of the brush against canvas. Each stroke became a meditation, channeling his anxieties into something tangible, something that transcended mere words. The door creaked open, interrupting his thoughts. Startled, he turned to see David standing hesitantly in the threshold, the afternoon light cloaking him in an ethereal glow. Jacob's heart raced again, this time not from doubt but from the exhilarating prospect of connection. "You decided to come," Jacob remarked, his voice trembling slightly as he sought to steady himself. David took a single step forward, then paused as if hesitating in a world of choice. "I thought maybe I'd give it a shot," he finally said, soft but firm. Jacob's heartbeat quickened, the moment swelling with potential. "Great," Jacob managed, swallowing his vulnerability. "I was just about to start. I could use some company." As David stepped deeper into the studio, anxiety twisted in Jacob's stomach. Would this encounter lead to a deeper understanding, or would it unravel before their eyes? The inquisitive gaze David shot his way ignited hope that had long felt dormant. The paintbrush as a catalyst, their upcoming creation could either bind or sever them. But the rush of possibilities surged forward. This was their chance. "Let us begin," Jacob said, conviction weaving through his tone, a silent commitment to navigate this delicate dance together. Yet in the part of his mind that echoed with doubts, he questioned the cost of this journey. Would the chaos they created ultimately reveal the beauty and vulnerability, or would it leave them more exposed than before? With swaths of color at the ready, Jacob took a deep breath and prepared to plunge deeper into uncharted territory, both within his artwork and the connection unfolding between them. But the canvas waited, blank and full of potential, like their burgeoning relationship. The moment exited the realm of fantasy, and reality anchored in a thrilling wave of uncertainty, sending Jacob spiraling towards what lay ahead. "Now the real question is," he thought, "what will we unleash through this collaboration?" Jacob watched David as he approached the easel, his every movement radiating an intriguing mix of curiosity and apprehension. The air between them thrummed with an electric tension, charged by the weight of unspoken possibilities. He fought the urge to overanalyze David's every reaction. Instead, Jacob concentrated on the canvas before them, dampening the cacophony of his doubts with the vibrant colors at hand. "Which color speaks to you?" Jacob asked, breaking the silence, conscious of his effort to foster a sense of camaraderie. The question startled David, who seemed lost in contemplation, the shadows coursing across his face betraying a flicker of uncertainty. I guess this one?" David said hesitantly, reaching for a bright orange. There was innocence in his choice, an unfiltered enthusiasm bubbling to the surface as though the color itself ignited something within him. "Great choice," Jacob responded, careful to match the warmth in David's voice. As David applied the paint to canvas, Jacob marveled at the freshness in his strokes, free yet devoid of the intricacies Jacob often imposed upon himself. In that moment, he intuitively recognized that they were embarking on a journey far more significant than anything he had initially envisioned. With each shared brushstroke, the studio transformed into a sanctuary. David's gregarious personality began to chip away at Jacob's hesitance, his laughter mingling with the vibrant colors splashed across the canvas. Yet, the moment of connection was punctuated by Jacob's internal struggle. He hesitated. Was this dichotomy between chaos and control the reflection of his own emotional conflicts? The scars of past failures loomed in his memory, reverberating loudly every time he considered exposing himself to the creative forces swirling around him. "Look," David said suddenly, pointing at the growing piece before them. "Isn't it beautiful how it's all forming?" Jacob peered at their creation, the chaos coalescing into something surprisingly coherent and profound. It was a delicate dance of harmony and discord, mirroring the complexities that danced within each of them. "Yeah," Jacob murmured, almost to himself. Something mirrored in the canvas resonated deeply within him, opening a door to a self he had long guarded. He realized that maybe art was more than a means of communication, it was a collaborative understanding of oneself and others. As they transitioned between laughter and thoughtful silence, a fear crept up in Jacob, as potent as it had ever been. What would become of this new dynamic? Would David's presence nurture his own vulnerabilities, or would it gradually expose them, leaving him feeling fragmented? With a deep breath, Jacob chose to confront his anxiety. What if we embrace the imperfections? he proposed. Art is messy, right? Just like emotions. David's expression shifted, his brow furrowing momentarily as he mulled over the sentiment. That's true. Maybe we should add some chaotic splashes, he replied, enthusiasm bubbling within his voice once more. And so they did. Jacob dipped his brush into the deepest indigo, letting his instincts take charge as he flicked color haphazardly against the canvas. He could feel the pulse of creativity thundering in his veins, an exhilarating sensation that fueled his passion. In surrendering to spontaneity, he understood he was daring to drift farther from the shore of his insecurities. Do you ever feel like letting loose could free you? Jacob asked, grappling with the concept even as he voiced it. David raised an eyebrow, his thoughtful gaze fixed on the canvas. I guess. I've always been told to stick to the script. But maybe it's time I wrote my own. The resonant truth of those words whispered directly to Jacob's consciousness. Here was a tangible moment of personal evolution unfolding before him, a reminder that growth required an unshackling of self-imposed restraints, yet, as their piece began to take form, a flicker of doubt edged its way back in. Unfinished and unrefined, a mirror of their relationship loomed before them, uncertain and still in progress. The lingering question loomed, would they embrace the imperfections together, or would the fear of failure pull them apart? With the canvas now a kaleidoscope of chaos and beauty, Jacob felt a shift within himself, awakening new perspectives. One thing was clear: this collaboration would demand vulnerability, but it held the promise of unexpected revelations. The canvas, once blank, was now alive with color and emotion. But as Jacob's heart raced, so too did the unsettling thought: was he prepared to confront the vulnerabilities that awaited him at the heart of their creation? He took a breath and pushed the brush forward, more determined than ever to unveil what remained hidden beneath the surface. Would they both emerge transformed by this experience, or would the weight of their fears dim the vibrant hues they had begun to craft together? As Jacob painted, he felt an unexpected rhythm take hold of his body, a pulse of invitation urging him to dismantle his own barriers. With each fresh stroke, he began to recognize that this was not just about the canvas but a reflection of his deeper self, a dialogue with the uncertainties that had long confined him. Each flick of his brush carried the potential to redefine who he was and who he could become. David stepped back, momentarily examining the evolving mix of chaos and intent before him. The laughter that once filled the air now receded, replaced by a hum of contemplation as they both absorbed the visual cacophony they manifested. Was there magic hidden within this eruption of colors, or was it merely an explosion of their respective fears and dreams? What if this canvas is more than just our artwork? David speculated, his voice hesitant yet firm. Jacob's brow furrowed, intrigued. What if it shows us how to express ourselves without the fear of judgment? The depth of David's insight struck Jacob like a thunderclap. Could this venture into art indeed serve as a metaphor for their inward struggles? Would they find liberation in sharing these imperfections? He paused, holding his brush mid-air. This wasn't just about producing a piece, it was a profound exploration of what truly lay beneath the layers of paint and fear. Jacob felt a sudden surge of frustration at his previous self-images of the stoic artist who meticulously controlled his narrative. Was he ready to dismantle that self, that illusion of control, brick by brick? Let us push further, Jacob prompted, the fervor in his voice igniting a spark in David's eyes. He dipped into black, thick and foreboding, and flung it onto the canvas in a bold arc. The image transformed yet again, the chaos now enhanced by shadows seemed to evoke an emotional depth that had previously eluded them. What are we doing? David chuckled, but it masked an earnest thrill of disbelief. We're learning to express without inhibition, Jacob replied, his voice steady despite the rapid beating of his heart. It's terrifying, but freeing. As David joined in, dark strokes mingling with dazzling colors, Jacob sensed their connection deepening. It was as if each brush lasted longer on the surface, intertwining their vulnerabilities, coalescing into something unique. If they could empower each other to embrace messiness both in art and in life, what would they uncover about themselves? Would this become a sanctuary rather than a battleground for their fears? Personified hesitation surged like a tidal wave through Jacob's thoughts. Just as swiftly as he had embraced this liberating experience, a darker whisper called him back to the confines of his previous life. The anxiety of judgment arose, looming large over their vibrant creation. What would it mean to stand before others and expose this part of himself? Would there be condemnation or, conversely, understanding? David broke into his contemplation. You know, I've struggled with feeling out of place, like I should confine myself to a rigid structure to fit in. Jacob felt the echo of those words resonate within him, growing louder. Maybe it's time to redefine those boundaries. Could artistic expression truly become a vehicle for connection, a means of bridging gaps ingrained by his insecurities? The possibility of uncovering more of himself alongside David lay tantalizingly close, though the fear of what lay on the other side stifled him. In the quiet that followed, Jacob made a daring decision. Let us invite someone else to view this to see what we've created. Panic surged momentarily, knotting in his stomach. What if this act laid bare everything he had fought to shield: the fear, the longing, the fragile beauty of his authentic self? Are you sure? David voiced softly, glancing between Jacob and the canvas, uncertainty flickering on his face. Yes, Jacob affirmed, meeting David's gaze with determination. There was no stepping back now. He could feel the anticipation and depths of vulnerability stirring in his core. They both had to confront their discomfort together. As the brush dipped back to the canvas, Jacob realized the time had come not just to create, but to reveal an unveiling that promised potential transformation. The question remained, who would they invite to witness their journey, and what undiscovered truths might come to light? With resolve settling within him, Jacob poised to make the next stroke. He sensed the tension unfurling, both thrilling and daunting. What awaited them both remained a reluctant mystery, obscured by the layers of color yet to be unveiled. As the colors swirled into shapes created by subconscious whims, Jacob began to feel the weight of the upcoming reveal pressing into the very fabric of his being. With every stroke, the thought of exposing this violent burst of creativity began to transform into a palpable excitement. They were on the precipice of something uniquely powerful, something that could either liberate or devastate. What do you think of showing this to Tara? David suggested, breaking the reverent silence that followed them, his voice a mix of enthusiasm and apprehension. Tara had been a supportive friend, often bringing insights that few others could offer. The thought of her seeing their work felt daunting but at the same time necessary. All right. Tara it is, Jacob replied, steeling himself. They needed an audience for this ritualistic act of unveiling, a witness to their journey into the heart of what holds them back. As Jacob pictured Tara arriving, the practicalities began to consume him. Should they prepare a statement to accompany the piece? Would they need to explain their motivations, or would the art speak for itself? The messy, erratic patterns painted before him seemed to say more than words ever could. He feared exposing their insecurities in a verbal format, fearing a misstep that may overshadow their intentions. In the haze of his contemplation, he hesitated, grappling with an interminable loop of what-ifs. What if Tara saw only chaos? What if she didn't understand what they had intended to convey? What if they remained forever misrepresented by their own work? David seemed to read his thoughts, taking a moment to pull away from the canvas and face him. You can't control how people perceive this, Jacob. The moment we create, we release it into the world. It's a dialogue, not a dictate. His words resonated deeply, wheeling in Jacob's mind like a turning tide. Could the act of creation foster unexpected connections as well as expose vulnerabilities? Perhaps it wasn't about perfection or even understanding, but about the raw truth stripped bare for others to see. With a newfound clarity, he acknowledged the need for transparency. They would not simply show the art, they would stand alongside it, ready to embrace the interpretations it might evoke, both favorable and unfavorable. As the sun dipped lower, casting shadows across the studio, Jacob felt an electric surge propelling him back toward the canvas. Whether the art turned out to be a mess or a masterpiece, both interpretations mattered. Each line painted was a past weight lifted, a conversation they could initiate about their deeper struggles, their very humanity laid bare. Soon enough, Tara arrived, her warm smile enveloping the room like a gentle wave. Jacob could feel the nervous energy punching through his order and poise, tightening every muscle in his body. Her presence, intended to affirm their creative accomplishment, instead blanketed him in anxiety. He fidgeted with the brush, the once diligent strokes faltering beneath the scrutiny of what was to come. Hey guys! Can I see it? She asked, her genuine curiosity evident. The moment hung in limbo, a moment when the world felt both excitingly alive and terrifyingly uncertain. "Sure," Jacob managed to respond. His palms slick against the brush, he stepped back to let Tara survey the chaotic swirl of color, shadow, and light. Tara stepped forward, studying every inch of the canvas. Her brow furrowed in concentration, each passing second intensified by what the painting represented. It teased out the latent energy of their joint vulnerabilities, the walls they both desired to break down in tandem. Jacob's heart raced. This was their moment, a confrontation that stood to reveal more than just paint on canvas. Would Tara embrace the chaos as he hoped, or would she withdraw, reflecting back his worst fears? As silence enveloped them, a single thought seared through the artist's mind. Would what they uncovered through this act of vulnerability fortify their bond, or would it fracture under the weight of exposure? "What do you think?" Jacob finally asked, his voice barely breaking the quiet as he caught the light twinkle in her eyes. As her mouth opened to respond, he could feel the world pause, the fragile moment pregnant with possibility. "What if she saw something we didn't see?" Jacob pondered, suddenly aware that this next revelation might very well dictate the direction of not just their artistic journey but their lives. Tara finally let the breath she had held blossom into a soft smile. "It's incredible. It's raw." Her words spilled into the room like sunlight breaking through a dense cloud cover. Jacob felt an intoxicating rush of energy. It was the first taste of validation he'd longed for, confirmation that their chaotic expression meant something. David's eyes lit up with a flicker of pride and warmth, an unguarded moment where vulnerability seemed to knit them closer together. "Raw is good," Jacob replied, tension unwinding as he began to comprehend the delicate masterpiece they had woven together. For him, their artwork had transcended chaos, had morphed into a sanctuary where both their voices were finally heard. "Give me insight," Tara continued, her voice thriving in the creative energy filling the air. "What inspired this?" That's a deep question, Jacob realized, extending further into the connection they had forged through paint. "This piece is a reflection of our world, a chaotic, emotional blend of beauty and struggle. Life isn't always orderly, and sometimes you have to embrace the mess to find the meaning." Each word felt like a brushstroke adding clarity to the conversation. Tara nodded appreciatively, drawing closer to the canvas. "That's the beauty of art. It holds the power to express what's often left unspoken. It tells a story." As he caught David's approving gaze, Jacob sensed a crucial moment unfolding, a transformative threshold they stood upon, dripping with the potential for deeper understanding. David stepped forward, swept by the waves of Tara's enthusiasm. "We wanted to demonstrate how often chaos hides beauty and how connecting through those experiences can create something profound," he interjected, gaining momentum with newfound courage. Jacob marveled at his father's willingness. This revelation highlighted their collective journey. They were no longer isolated figures, but instead, partners navigating formidable depths. Tara continued to explore the canvas, her observation blooming into something beyond surface appreciation. "What if you both presented this piece at a local gallery?" she suggested, excitement peppering her words. "It could be a launch point for discussions about vulnerability in the art world. It's an invitation for others to connect, too." The revelation cascaded over Jacob like a fresh wave, an unexpected glimmer of possibility ignited within him. "A gallery?" he mused. Did showing their work mean fully risking vulnerability? "Art isn't just for those who understand it, it's a human experience," David chimed in, capturing the essence Jacob felt bubbling beneath. "We've all navigated chaos in our own ways. Sharing this piece might help others articulate their stories." In that moment, Jacob felt a metamorphosis blooming inside him, a conviction solidifying around his sense of identity. This was bigger than art, it was a shared narrative binding them closer as a family. They could redefine how they interacted, not just as father and son but as artists exploring their interconnectedness. "I want to do it," Jacob proclaimed, instilling conviction into his decision. "Let us share this. It'll be a chance to connect and engage instead of hide." With every pulse of resolve that reverberated through him, Jacob stood taller. There it was, his voice, affirming its presence beyond just the canvas. The fear that had shadowed him for years began to dissipate, revealing to him that he was no longer a victim of his insecurities. he was a creator and a storyteller. As Tara beamed with encouragement, Jacob caught David's gaze. In that moment, something unfurled between them, a profound understanding that embraced their shared vulnerabilities and the potential for growth. The appreciation in David's eyes now radiated warmth, driven by the recognition of Jacob's emerging confidence. Maybe it's time we not only invite the world to see our art, but also reveal our stories, David remarked, reflection softening his features. Their endeavor was now about connection. They stood on the brink of something powerful, the invitation of authenticity. Awaited them an invitation they were finally ready to accept. Collectively bound by their journey, they could forge a new narrative, not only for themselves but also for those who experienced their art. Eager anticipation shimmered in the air as they began mapping their next steps together. The prospect of showcasing their work at a gallery loomed closer, yet it felt far less daunting now. Each stroke now held the promise of possibility. Jacob's heart overflowed with a newfound sense of freedom. What lay ahead filled him with exhilaration rather than fear. Jacob took a deep breath, allowing the weight of that moment to crystallize within him. He was becoming the artist he was always meant to be, unreservedly embracing the journey to reclaim his voice. "Let us do this," he affirmed, a triumphant smile spreading across his face. David and Tara exchanged looks of acceptance, a trio of artists ready to reveal what lay beneath the surface. From chaos, they would craft meaning. From vulnerability, they would generate strength. Jacob had not just painted a canvas, he had begun to paint his life anew, a vivid testament to the beauty that emerges from complexity. Now the next chapter awaited them, brimming with possibilities and the promise of connection. This was not just an ending, but a captivating beginning. To ensure you witness all the transformative stories to come, you need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support for heartfelt tales of triumph over adversity. Leave a like to feed the algorithm and help others discover this journey. Comment your thoughts, reactions, and theories about Jacob's story. Don't wait even one more second, share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion.